Welcome back to Scary Stories from the Rez. This is part 2 of Colton Phillips' Scary Stories.
So the second time, biggest experience I had with a Sasquatch was like when I was a teenager. I was living at my grandma's house, living with her and a big family. I had a big family in her house there. So this one night, I have no idea why, but we were all up at 2 a.m. during the summertime. And we're all up 2 a.m. My grandma had a bunch of dogs, and there's puppies outside, and we could hear them like crying. They were hungry. So my grandma and my cousin, they all grabbed some like puppy food and all that, some stuff they were gonna bring out to the puppies. And like I said, there's 2 a.m, and I'm walking down the steps. They were already at the puppies. They're across the yard at the puppies there. They're feeding them, and all the puppies are just like munching up. And then I was walking down. I got halfway to them, and my grandma's older dogs all started barking. My grandma had these rundown vehicles in her yard that people just park there and say, "Oh, I'm gonna grab that back later," but never did. And so all these dogs are barking at these cars. They're just really barking at them. And my grandma and them would kind of like phase it out. They kind of tuned it out. They were busy with the puppies, and I was like, "What are you guys barking at? What are you guys barking at?" So I walked over beside one dog here. And I was like patting. I was like, "What's going on?" Looking at these cars, seeing if there's anything in them. I was like, "Is somebody there? Something there?" And I took a step towards the car, and I remember this moment. Something big, huge, big, and black just jumped out. It's ginormous. And then like when it jumped out, it made it like boom on the ground. And all the dogs, I remember seeing them all in front of me. They all jumped back, like they all jumped backwards, and they all they were dead silent. They stopped barking, like they were shocked and surprised to see it. Like they were dead silent, and I was like shocked at it. And then all of a sudden, it just started running down the road, and I just remember seeing these big elbows, going up and down, up and down, up and down as it's running down the road. They're really fast, and like I couldn't even process it. The dogs when this thing was all the way down the road, the dogs finally processed it. They're like, "Oh," and then they started barking again. They stopped at the yard. They stopped at the gate. They didn't want to cross that line going out of the yard. But they just kept barking at it, and they just kept running. And then I turned around to my grandma. I was like, "Grandma, get inside the house." And she's like, "What?" And I was like, "There's something over there. I think it's a Sasquatch." And she runs over. We get up there. My cousin's running behind her, and I'm getting them up the stairs. And we close the door, and I run to the front of the house where the big windows are. And then there's a patio they just built. I jump out on that patio, and I'm looking out into the darkness there. And there's one street light on the highway there. And just lit up that one little part of that highway there. I was just looking to see if I could see it all and whatnot. Couldn't see anything after that. Like I could hear something moving around in the forest and the trees and whatnot. And the dogs are still barking like crazy, but none of them wanted to leave the yard. They stayed in that. They didn't follow it. They just kept in our yard there. And I was just trying to find it for like a good 10 minutes before I just gave up. I was like, okay, whatever it was, it's out in the forest now. It probably sees me, but I can't see it. So I told my grandma and everything I saw. I was like, "Yeah, something big jumped out and just ran down the road." The dogs even got scared. They were silent, and I don't know if you guys didn't see that. You guys were too busy with the puppies there, but something was there, and it ran down the road. It was hiding behind all the cars there. And my grandma was like, "Oh yeah, it's probably Sasquatch then. It was probably just sneaking around, just looking at us as we were feeding the puppies. Maybe it was bothering the puppies. Maybe it was taking their food or something." And we were just like, "Okay, yeah." So we kind of went back to sleep. And like I said, it was like 2 a.m. I don't know why we were up at 2 a.m, but we all went back to our rooms and went to sleep that night. And didn't hear anything after that. Just the dogs stopped barking, and they went to sleep too. But yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so something in my grandma's yard there.
Wow.
I just remember how big it was. I just see those elbows. The only thing I could see in the dark was elbows go up and down, up and down. It was running down the road really fast. Like 1 second it was like in front of me, the next second it was like right down the road there, and the dogs finally like processed. So it took that amount of time for them to process, just a second, and they're like, "Oh, what was that?"
Wow.
I remember them jumping back. They were dead silent. Like a human wouldn't be able to do that to a dog, especially like 5 of them. But something that big, just boom, and then all of a sudden they just went shocked. They froze.
Yeah. Scary.
Yeah. Well, if you want, I got an alien kind of story.
Do you have alien stories?
Yeah, UFOs.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I do want to hear the alien stories.
All right, so this happened again when I was a teenager. I wasn't living with my grandma. I was living at a place that was above our Rez school. And so my dad was off. I think he was off visiting family and whatnot. And I was just hanging out at my house with my friends. We used to hang around at night, go play hide and go seek around the reserve or whatnot, go walk between each other's houses and whatnot, go play video games. So this one night, I remember the summer, I grabbed my dad's old camcorder. It was an older one, but not too old. I used to record stuff all that whole summer, and I had to walk around with it, and we just make cool little videos. And so this one night, we were just sitting out on the front patio of my house, and it was just getting dusk, right? Just the sun setting, and it was like orange sky, whatnot. And one side of the sky was orange, and the other side was starting to turn blue and purple and whatnot. And then there's a mountain range, not too like pretty far away from us. Like you have to drive way over around to it. It's like you go around the corner, and it goes up the mountain up to the plateau. And I remember recording this. I have it on video recording somewhere. My brother has the video recorder, and he has all the tapes, so I'm hoping to grab it back from him. But I remember this night because I was watching, we were looking around, I was recording, and on that mountain range, there's like 3 little shelves that go like out, down, down. And on that mountain, there 3 bright lights showed up. First one showed up, really big, bright white light, then one right beside it, and then another one right below it too. And they just sat above this mountain there, just sat there. And we're all pointing at them. All of us could see it. We're like, hey, you see those lights? I'm like, oh, what is that? What are those? And we like, oh, they're helicopters. Like, no, we could hear helicopters. We'd be able to hear them from here. And they're just sitting there. They've been sitting there for like a good hour now. So I was recording them, like zooming in on them and everything. And all I could see was bright white light. There's 3 lights there. We're just recording them, via camera them. And I have no idea why, but when I was that age, when we were doing all this, we didn't freak out about it. We're just like, oh yeah, it's probably just UFOs, it's whatever. Let's go inside and play video games now. And we just kind of like, okay, let's close it all down. And went back inside and like did that. And it wasn't until like years later I was like, what the heck? I caught UFOs on camera just sitting there above our mountains there. Like, why was I not more like freaked out about that? Why did I just kind of like forget about it and go inside? Why did we all just forget about it and go inside? And I was like, somewhere on those videotapes that my brother has is that experience of us seeing those 3 lights floating above a mountain there. I'm like, that's not something that you should be able to just like brush off. I was like, why do any of us do that? And now that's why I go contact my brother. I was like, hey, where's that camcorder? He has it ready for me to pick up, but he lives in Williams Lake at the moment. I'm like, I've not had the time to go and pick it up from him. So when I do, I'm going to find that footage and just like try to get it like digitized or something, put it on to something where I can put it on to the internet or something. But yeah, I just want to see it again, make sure that that really did happen. I'm like 99.99% sure that I have it on video camera that we saw UFOs floating above our reserve. And there's always been stories of elders telling us like, UFOs and aliens come to our, and like recently in the last few years, like people have been saying there's aliens running around our reserve. Like on one end of the reserve you can see all the reds, like you hear all the dogs all along this big stretch. And then people have been saying like aliens have run by and you could hear all these dogs bark at one end of the reserve, and they just keep going in a line all the way to the end, and these dogs would bark. So you just hear those barking all the way, and then it would just disappear. So something would be running around behind the scenes, and people, elders and all that, it's aliens are here. The aliens are here. So yeah. So somewhere in there I have that camcorder. I got to just get the footage again.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see.
Yeah. It's my alien story. And then, I think my uncle's always said that he's heard aliens walking around when I wasn't living there anymore in the forest there. I hear the dogs bark, and all just dogs would go silent, and they'd hear more things walking around and whatnot. And then after they're gone, the dogs would start barking again. Scary stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's freaky.
Right?
So you moved from Anaheim to Prince George. And what caused your move?
From my reserve, I kind of went to university in Kelowna, and I met someone, and we were together, and she was looking at jobs. She's a teacher, and she wanted to come up here to start her teaching career. She got a continuing up here. So I was like, okay, I'll move up there with you. So I came up here and been here ever since. And then I was working in a mill, and I got into the education, and people used to tell me I didn't know how I was going to do well in this job, and they always just told me, do what you're good at. And then I just thought about it for a bit, and I said, I'm really good at telling stories. I'm really good at this stuff. So then I just started telling scary stories to the kids, and from then on, I've been labeled as the scary story guy.
Yeah, you definitely had a reputation throughout all of the schools as a scary story guy. Have you seen anything when you were in Prince George, or had any kind of experiences here?
Small experiences. When I used to work at one experience, I worked at Spruce Land School. It was in December there, and me and my partner were going into the room there, and I remember unlocking the door there, and all of a sudden the door just kind of swung open, and then the lights just turned on, and we were standing outside the door, so we looked at each other, and it's like after hours, because it was like we had a toy bingo that night, and so we just looked at each other. We threw our stuff into the room, then we turned off, closed the door, and we just left out of that school. And we're like, okay, we're done for tonight. And then we next morning we came back, we're looking around, it was like nothing else happened after that. So I was like, okay, maybe just one off there. But in my house, I always see like white figures, corner of my eye, just kind of flick by, and I look over and see around, and I always just say, hey, what's going on here? Talk to them and see if they're good spirits and whatnot. And if not, I always just kind of sage my house every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I had a relative come live with me, and then they would always talk about there's something in this room, and I'm like, whatever is in that room, it's something you brought into this house. I always sage my legs, I always smudge everything. I know my house is clear, so whatever's in there, it's with you. It's not anything to do with me here. They always get freaked out when I tell them that, and then I always go in there, smudge the room for them. And then other than that, no small stuff. And I try to go out to the forest with the teachers who go out, do the trap line and whatnot, and teach kids out stuff there. And then when I bring my kids out there, we always talk about all the scary things in the forest. And it's like, oh, maybe we'll see a shapeshifter or a skinwalker, and maybe we'll see a Sasquatch. They're really fast. You got to keep your eyes open. They're like, oh. And then eyes are open and looking around everywhere. And like, Mr. Phillips, what about over there? I'm like, it could be over there. You never know. I always try to freak them out, but they always just love it and have fun all the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so much fun bringing the kids out to the trap line. I always did that. And it's another thing that, like, kids who might not do so well in school, they'd, like, really excel. Mm-hmm. They'd be leaders out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one thing with my scary stories, too. When I first started up with kids, I always tell them about, like, how Indigenous culture, that's our learning, is from around a fire there. Half our learning is from that fire, other half is experiencing all of it. And I always tell the kids, like, when you're in classroom, it's the same thing. That's your fires in that classroom. Your teacher is the elder teaching you these things that you don't know about. So that's why it's always important to listen to your teachers. Always listen to your elders. Everybody who knows more than you will have to listen to them. Because if you don't know anything. And then I always tell my kids, back in the day, back in like the ancient times, that was the difference between life and death, if you knew something or not. So it was always important to listen every time. Always make sure you're silent. And I always tell them a thing the elders used to teach me. You have one mouth and two ears for a reason, so you can listen more than you speak. And I always tell them that. Always listen more than you speak, so you'll always be smart. And they always try to be good about that. And I always tell the teachers, make sure when you're telling your stories, make sure they listen like they're in my scary stories. And see how that goes.
Mm-hmm. Have any of these experiences taught you things about life? I think, or life lessons, or
they've taught me to be brave. Like seeing my cousin follow that Sasquatch around the house there, I always like admired him for that. I always wanted to be as brave as he was and whatnot. I've seen how my brother reacts in those kind of situations. Like, oh, he's a brave guy, and it makes me kind of always remember that some of the best things in life are on the other side of fear. So I always try to remember that whenever I'm scared. I'm like, everybody's scared. So it's taught me to be it's taught me that fear is natural, but we always choose what to do with that fear. Let it control us, or we control it. And so that's what it's taught me, to be a braver person and always go into the unknown with all experiences, not just scary experiences, new experiences. That's what I like doing. Like, I don't just research my own culture with like all these cool creatures. I go to other cultures, and that's what the first thing I always look at other cultures, like what kind of mythology do they have? What kind of creatures do they have? What's in their stories and whatnot. I like learning more stories from other cultures. And like I have a friend who's from Mexico, and she tells me some of her stories. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. It's so much different from us up here. Mm-hmm. Me and her always going back and forth about like curses and whatnot, and she says, I'll curse you. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm on home field advantage up here. I got more power here. And she's like, you got me there. But yeah, that's basically all what I've learned, is just go into life not afraid, feel it, but don't let it control you.
Mm-hmm. It's a good life lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So you said you smudge, like, do you do anything else to protect yourself when you're going into new places, or any kind of ceremony or traditions that you do?
I used to work up in Haida Gwaii back before I came to live in Prince George, and I made a lot of Haida friends, and my Haida friends always like taught me this one thing that I like doing now is they have Devil's Club beads, and I noticed a lot of them have necklaces made of it all. And I used to ask them, what's that about? What's that? And he's like, oh, it's Devil's Club. It rewards away evil spirits, good for you and all that. It's good medicine. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And now, like, I have some of my own Devil's Club and whatnot. And back when I was in other schools, I'd have kids who come with me, who come up to me and like talk to me about like how they were troubled and they think they had spirits like following them and whatnot, I give them some devil's club, like, here, take this, put this on your dresser or something to keep with you, and then it'll hopefully protect you more. And then some of them would come back to me like, yeah, it felt good, it really helped me, thank you, Mr. Phillips. I'm like, no worries, that's what I'm here for, to help you guys with whatever. And if this is one of the things, I'm happy to do it. And so it's one of the things I've learned is just devil's club and smudging and positive thoughts. I've always been really big on my positive thoughts, and my mother taught me that these spirits here, anything that wants to do you harm, they can't do it without you giving them permission. So I always have to, like, whenever I go into a new place or something, or whenever I feel like uneasy or something, I always just kind of like clear my head and just kind of wave my arm and say, hey, whatever's here is that's not supposed to be here, leave now and we won't have a problem. And for the most part, that's what happens, is just they leave, and you have control over it. They don't have that control. They need to take it from you. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do to keep myself clear and whatnot, and just think positive and keep your mind clear.
Wow. Have you had any stories from your students that surprised you or were interesting?
Not particularly. They would come to me with stories, and I like listening to them. They're all interesting, but they're young. They don't have they don't have the experience of going out there into the world and having all these other big extravagant stories. So I'm always telling them that when you go and live life more, you'll get more and more experience, get more and more stories. And that's how come I have all these stories, because I'm so old. I get to share them with all you guys. So I always try to tell them, if you have a cool story, always come and tell me. But nothing that's really surprised me so far. Mm-hmm. It's kind of stuff I've always heard and things they're interested in and whatnot. And they would bring up stories. They're mostly asking me for all my stories. And like every time I walk into a classroom, they're all like, Mr. Phillips, one scary stories. I'm like, when I talk to your teacher, we'll get that soon. Don't worry. It's going to come. But yeah, no other scary stories or anything that they've told me has really surprised me. Mm-hmm. Then, there's like a whole bunch of different kind of creatures too around our community. I've heard other things like I said, the skinwalker shapeshifters. I don't know if anybody knows about the little people.
I've heard some stories actually I've heard one of your stories about the little people.
Yeah, the little people.
And I've heard some from here in Prince George too. Yeah.
I was so surprised when I first moved to Kelowna to go to university. I thought little people were just like an exclusive to our community, because I never ever heard about little people besides there. When I went to Kelowna there, I was walking around with some of my Okanagan friends, and they were walking around late at night there, and then one of his friends said, hey, Josh, maybe what if there's like little people around? And then my friend Josh was like, hey, you shut your mouth, you don't talk like that, you don't talk about them. And then I looked at him, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys have little people? And he's like, you guys have little people? We're like, oh my gosh. And we all like ran back to his house. We're like, they're out there. And we ran back. We started talking about it. And like, you guys have them? He's like, yeah, we have stories about them. They're all over the place. I'm like, oh man, we have stories up there. We have stories in my community about those. And I was like, God, it's just so cool to find out things you share with other like nations and other cultures and whatnot, like how little people do stretch a long ways and whatnot. So it just makes you think. I'm like, man, how did these stories get this far? And like, how do we have our own? They have those same ones too. And like, same thing with another story about when I went and worked in Haida Gwaii. One of my Haida friends, he asked me, he's like, hey, do you Tŝilhqot'in? Do you guys have a story about a bear and a woman getting married? And I was like, yeah. And he's just like, we do too. And I'm like, he asked me, he's like, what is it with bears and marrying women and all that? And I was like, I don't know, man. That's the story I heard when I was a kid. So it's just cool to know that there's another story that we share and whatnot. And it's probably like a lot of nations how I have that same kind of story too.
Could you tell our listeners like what little people do?
Okay. Yeah, little people are kind of like, I guess, the indigenous equivalent of the Fae folk, or little gnomes running around the forest and whatnot. And then they're like little tricksters, and we blame them for a lot of stuff, like taking stuff out of our houses, or stealing stuff from us and whatnot, and we just kind of blame them. Like, oh, it's the little people. From when I was growing up there, not a lot was said about them. You weren't supposed to really talk about them, because if they heard you talking about them, that was a cue to come. Like, you were kind of inviting them in and whatnot. And so every time you talk about that, the elders would be like, just raise a finger, and they'd stop, and then you'd have to just go change the topic and whatnot. And so that was just really cool thing to learn as a kid, and hearing some stories about them, like auntie getting chased by them and whatnot. And I used to see these little holes all around our community and whatnot too, and like these little archways built in the like rose bushes and whatnot, like perfect little archways. And like just seeing them made my mind go, oh, there's little people living here, little people. All those kids used to explore trying to look for these little people, but we can never ever find them. But yeah, just little tricksters that would take your stuff or do bad things. And like some of the horrendous, not horrendous, but like the scary stories about them is that they would steal children. Like they trick kids coming into the forest and make you follow them until like they get you down into this hole, and then they disappear. You never find those kids ever again. And so they tell us they turn you into a little person or something, or they steal your soul. So yeah, stuff like that, crazy stuff that us kids had no business looking into, but we did anyway.
My cousin said that if little people are like taking your stuff and you want them to stop, that you have to leave out an offering for them, like coins and candy and stuff, and then they'll leave you alone.
Okay. And I haven't had any problems with them, but yeah, now I know. I know. Always the offering, always good offering.
Yeah.
Good trade.
So, I don't know. If anything goes missing, I guess you could just leave some stuff out for the little people.
Right. It's probably where most of my stuff keeps going. Maybe I should do that. I'm missing a lot of stuff in my house. Maybe that's where it's all going. Didn't think there were little people up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other stories or anything you want to share with us?
Do you want the little people story?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So this is a story that my auntie once told me when I was a young kid, and she's only ever told us this like maybe once or twice or something, but she's never actually wanting to relive that story. She never actually wants to tell that story all the time, so she just always says no to us, and we kind of ask her again. But she said that she was playing out in the forest as a little kid, and she was with her siblings and whatnot. They're out in the backwoods there playing house or whatnot, doing what little kids would do. And then it was just her and her sisters. And then she said as they were playing, they started hearing these voices. And then as they looked for the voices, they saw up on the hill that goes further into the forest, they saw some of their friends from school or from down the reserve there. And they would say, hey, come follow us, come play with us. And so my auntie and her sisters like, hey, those are our friends. Let's go follow them. Let's go after them. So they start running after them, and they start running up the mountain into the hills there. And as they're going further and further up into these hills there, my auntie and them, as they're getting closer to these things that were their friends, the closer they got, the faster they would get, and they leave them behind again. And my auntie and them were like getting tired, like, hey, stop, hang out, wait a minute, we can't catch up to you, stop. But they just kept going, they kept ignoring them, and just kept saying, follow us, follow us. And as my auntie and them said, they were getting closer and closer. My auntie was looking at them, and she said as the more and more they followed them into the mountain there, the less and less they started looking like their friends. They stopped looking like little kids. They started looking like little men running through the forest, getting just really, she said they were kind of like look ugly or whatnot. And so they're just running through the forest or the bushes there, and they just kept saying, follow us, follow us. And their voices even started changing. And my auntie had to stop, and she stopped her other sisters. And she said, we have to go home now. And they all turned around and ran back down the hill there. And as they were running down the hill, they said that they could hear these things get angry and mad, start yelling, tell them, come back, and start chasing them through the woods too. And my auntie said she could hear a lot of them behind them, and she just kept running, holding their hands, and going all the way into back to my grandma's house there. And then my grandma has a big yard, and so there's a kind of like where the tree line stops. And as soon as they got out of that tree line, these things stopped following them, and they ran across the yard. They went up to the steps and banging on the door. My grandma opened the door, and they all run in and tell her what happened. And she said that my grandma went out there and she could hear these things, and my grandma said she got mad at them, said, hey, leave my kids alone. You leave them alone. You don't touch them. You don't try to steal them away from me. And then she could just hear them yell, and then they kind of just disappeared. And my grandma again got mad at these kids. This is why I tell you not to follow people in the forest. I won't talk to people out there. You don't do any of those things. And they're like auntie and them, okay, yeah, we'll listen. And then, yeah.
That would be really freaky. I wonder what would happen if they went all the way.
Yeah, wouldn't have had that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, my auntie doesn't like telling that story. She said she doesn't like the way it makes her feel. She doesn't want to ever relive the fear she had on that day. And because they were just kids when that happened. This is like way back in the day when there was like no police around, no nothing, no vehicles around, no phones. It was just a crazy time.
Wow. That's freaky. Well, do you have anything else you'd like to share with us? Or any teachings you want to share with the listeners?
Never whistle at night. Always take care of yourself and be positive. I would think other teachings. Always listen to your elders. Get as much stories as you can. Make your own stories, and live a good life. No, I could tell more stories. I got tons to tell.
Keep on going,
yeah.
Totally.
All right. Well, there's one Sasquatch story that's always like been told to me and my cousins there ever since we were kids. It happened to my uncle Kenneth and his girlfriend at the time. They were walking back up from the fishing camp. The fishing camp's down quite a ways down the hill from my grandma's house there. And my uncle Kenneth, he's one of those tough guys, like big burly guy who's like worked in the firefighting and all that, and just tough guy who just didn't let anybody mess with him and whatnot. And so him and his girlfriend were walking back up the hill after fishing, and like they left their fish there. They were going up there to see if anybody would come back and get the fish for them. And it was dark, completely dark. And my uncle Kenneth's just talking to his girlfriend. I was just talking conversation, whatnot. And his girlfriend, she said that as they're walking up the road, she could hear something on the side of the road, on the other side of the fence, in the grass and the trees. And she heard it, just like bushes rustling, something stepping, walking behind them. My Uncle Kenneth didn't hear any of this because he was just busy talking. He just didn't stop talking. He was just talking about what they're going to do and all those plans for the fish and whatnot. His girlfriend just looked over and she said that there was a Sasquatch just kind of creeping up the hill right behind them on the side of the road there, just looking up at them, creeping around, just looking through the forest, through the trees and bushes and whatnot. And as they got further, he'd keep following them up there, still stepping. And she was freaked out. She didn't want to say anything. She like thought that my Uncle Kenneth would like turn around and try to fight it or something, or try to get mad at it, and like maybe it would just chase them or something. So at this moment, she's like, okay, it's staying there, it's not doing anything, so I'm just gonna pretend like nothing's happening. So she said they walked all the way up the hill, all the way around, all going down the road there, and got all the way back up to my grandma's house. She said that thing followed them all the way until like they got to my grandma's yard, and it stayed outside her yard there, just watched them go into the house. And then she said that after she got in that house, they kind of freaked out. She started telling them there was something following us this whole time. It was out there. And then my Uncle Kenneth, she said that he went outside to look, and he was like, oh, there's nothing out there. There's nothing out there. But she's like, there was something out there following us all the way up from the fishing camp there. And then that's like where a lot of our Sasquatch stories too come from, is like when all these men and women are out there fishing on the river there. That's where a lot of Sasquatch stories come from. The Sasquatches come out of the woods and they just look at you and see what you're doing, or else they're across the river from you and they'll throw a rock in your direction, or they'll just keep throwing rocks in the river right in front of you when you're trying to dip net and whatnot, and it just scares the fish away. And so you have to like kind of just pack up and leave, because there's nothing you can do about it. And my mom even has stories about that where they're at fishing camps and like they'd say rocks would come flying from outside their vision in the forest on the other side. There were big, huge rocks that like a normal person couldn't fling across a huge river. And so they just come and just land, boom, 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 hitting the ground there. And they had to like move their camp, go down the river a bit more so they wouldn't get rocks thrown into their tents and whatnot. And yeah, a lot of my uncles have those scary Sasquatch stories where they're just out at the campfire just sitting there, and all of a sudden they just see a Sasquatch poke its head outside of the tree there and go back and just disappear, and then just like think that they'd just say, okay, the Sasquatch is watching me. They just go back to what they were doing until something else would happen, and they're like, okay, time to go. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like I said, lots of Sasquatch stories in our community.
Yeah.
And then my mom said this one time when she was a young kid there, they lived in an old house that was below my grandma's newer house, and it was like a smaller house. They had this little room with that had a hole in it, a chain in there. And she said that one night she was watching her siblings, her sister and her brother, my Uncle Kenneth and my Auntie Jennifer. They were there with her, and the adults were all gone off to the fishing camp. And then she had to sit there at home with them, and they were asleep. And then my Auntie Jennifer, she wakes up my mom, and she says, hey, I'm hungry. And then in this little room, there's a hole in the wall and a hole through the door, or a chain could go through. And you could push that door open just so much to reach a hand in. And they used to put like apples beside the door for the kids to grab. And so in this room, they had all their valuables, all the good fresh food, anything they needed to keep safe. They had it in that room. So my mom was half asleep. Say, hey, go to the little room, pick up that apple, and you'll be okay till morning. And I said, okay. And she walks down the hall. It's pitch black. They didn't have lights there. And she's going down. She gets to that door, and my mom says she hears that chain open. That's a chain rattle. She sticks her hand in there. She's reaching around looking for it. And my mom just still there, half asleep, listening for her. And all of a sudden, boom, like something grabbed her arm and just like pulled her into that room there, but it couldn't get her in because that door was chained to the wall there. So something had her, and she just like started screaming. And my mom jumped up, and Kenneth jumps up, and they run down the hall. They look at her, and then Aunt Jennifer's crying, screaming, something has me. And so they grab her, and they're trying to pull as hard as they could, trying to pull back on my auntie there, trying to get her out of this door with whatever has her, just trying to get her out of its grip. And all of a sudden it just lets her go, and then they all fall back. And then, as my mom said, she said that the door opens, and they could see just an eyeball looking outside the door, like the crack there, looking at them. And they all scream. They all run to the kitchen. My mom said she grabbed a knife and she ran back to the room there. She had her brother and sister behind her, and she held that knife there, and she could hear that door rattle, just bang and bang, and whatever was in there was still in that room. And they were just crying. They didn't know what to do because there's no phone back then. There's no close people. You had to run through the forest and pitch black to the next neighbor there. It was like a 5-minute walk. So they just stayed there and waited, and like after like maybe 20 minutes the noise just stopped, and I couldn't hear anything. And then it wasn't until a couple of hours later my grandma and my grandpa and all them came back, and then they went in there. My mom and them told them what happened. There's somebody in that room. It grabbed Jennifer. And they said they showed Jennifer's arm. There was like a big bruise around her wrist, whatever is holding her. And then they go to that room. I remember my grandpa is the big man there, so he's like, "Oh, if anybody's in here, I'm gonna kick you around." So he opens that door. Chain falls off. He swings open the door. He looks around, and he has the light looking around. And there's nothing in that room. He looks under everything. They look over, push everything aside. They look behind everything. They go into the closet door, nothing. They look at the window. The window was boarded from the outside, nailed on the inside, so nobody could break in there. And so they go back outside, and he goes out to the window on the outside. Nothing. There's no footprints and nothing. The boards are still there, strong where he nailed them in there. And he goes back. They look through that room again, and they couldn't ever find what was there. And then they still don't know to the day what it was that grabbed my Auntie Jennifer. And the kids always ask me, like, "What do you think it was?" And I was just saying, maybe it was a spirit. I think it was a spirit because nothing would ever get in that room without getting out there and whatnot. Like, you can't get in there without it being blocked off or anything. So whatever it was, I think it was a spirit. And that's another story I tell the kids too. Like, back in the day, like, you see the spirits, they used to throw people around. When I used to hear elders talking about stories, people getting pulled down hallways and whatnot. And that was a freaky thing when I watched the first Paranormal Activity for the first time, the very first one back in the day. I remember seeing those people getting dragged down the hallway and whatnot, and then I just like kind of clicked in my brain. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's what the elders used to say all the time." This is like way before any of these stories. Like, the first stories I heard about ghosts and all that was what the elders used to say. People getting pulled down the halls, pulled out of the houses and whatnot, getting dragged through the forest and whatnot. And just seeing those, I was like, that's what I used to tell like my kids too. Like, this is what ghosts can do. They can grab you sometimes. If they're strong enough, they can grab you and throw you around. Mm-hmm. And that's probably what happened to my Auntie Jennifer. Something grabbed her arm and was trying to pull her into that room, but it couldn't get her through that door. And then, yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a big war between the Tŝilhqot'in and some other people? Have you heard of
the Tŝilhqot'in War?
The Tŝilhqot'in War.
The 1864 one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was between us and the government.
Do you think there was that has anything to do with like any of the activities, spiritual kind of stuff that's happening out there?
Maybe. I've always grown up from stories and people telling us, like, as we're kids and whatnot, they used to tell us, like, yes, us Tŝilhqot'ins were very, very in tune with that spiritual stuff. Like, every time we talk about it, it's like, when we talk about our ceremonies and all that, we were very private about our ceremonies. We weren't, like, out in the open with it, and, like, we weren't doing POWs. Not that they told us. They told me that we didn't do POWs at all, because all our ceremonies were private. Our spirituality was private, so kind of just like did our own thing and kind of kept it to ourselves and whatnot. So when these spirits and all that, that's our connection to them, is that's what they always told us as kids. You guys are very powerful. All Tŝilhqot'ins are very powerful with this kind of stuff. That's why maybe that's another reason why Sasquatches are always around us, because we have that connection to them and whatnot. And like, I've always heard stories from other nations that have like deals with Sasquatches. They like had partnerships with them. Like, we'll feed you and you protect us out here. So who knows, maybe in our stories that got lost through our oral tradition and all that, through residential school, maybe we did have deals with Sasquatches. Maybe we did have these contracts with these creatures or these other entities that would protect us or help sustain our land and whatnot and look out for us. And then maybe that's one of the reasons.
Could be. Something to think about.
Yeah, food for thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, anything else you want to share? Or you tapped out for stories?
Like I said, I could keep going all day.
Yeah. I don't know how long have we been filming for?
We just crossed over an hour.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Okay.
We'll probably call it there then, I guess.
Yeah.
If you want me for another one next time, next season 2.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. You had lots of really great stories to share with us.
I hope it all was, what do you call it? I hope it was, it wasn't mumbo jumbo for me. Like, I always feel like I'm rambling on after a while. I'm like, I got to stop myself every time.
No, I think there were all lots of great stories, and it's cool to hear about like different places in BC and where people come from. So
it's one of the things I love too, is like learning from other nations. Like the Haida, when I went to Haida, like I've learned a lot of things about other different nations too, that have a lot of crazy creatures that they're scared of and have stories about and not. And the kids mostly around here, they all know about skinwalkers and wendigos and all that. And I talked about Sasquatch. One of the best was like not last year, but one of my first stories this year. It happened in October. Little girl comes up to me after I told her my scary stories, and she's like, "Mr. Phillips?" I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "I now believe in Sasquatches." And I'm like, "Oh, well, yeah, you should believe in that. I've seen them. They're around there somewhere." And she's like, "I'm going to look up them. Can you show me a picture of them?" And I had to go and print off a picture and show it to her. Like, this is what they look like. This is mostly what they look like. This is what people think they look like and whatnot. And she's like, "Oh my gosh." And just like, because you see her mind just like so excited for it and everything. And that's what I love telling stories to the kids, because it gets their mind working and gets them imagining things and whatnot. And they just have a good time. And that's what I love doing.
Yeah.